I think the other thing too is just the ability to kind of check your ego a little bit, like I think we come out of school being like, I have arrived, I'm ready to tackle the buildings, and it's even 11 years on and we get some pretty special commissions. It's never about us, it's never about what Seth thinks or Melissa thinks or anybody thinks about this thing. It's a group, it's a team sport.
Definitely a team sport. I mean, we always say to clients, there'll be plenty of us in the project. I'm not worried about us, our signatures being in there, for maybe want of a better description. But what really drives us and what's really interesting, and especially doing the kind of work that we do, which is primarily workplace, is learning about, and I say this as business owners who, as you say, are like learning on the job, learning about other people's businesses. We get incredible insight, and we get to sit across the table from brilliant people who are literally, in some cases, changing the world with the technology that they're developing.
100%.
And I think for us to be able to, get their time, be sat across the table from them and ask them questions that are all leading to developing a narrative, design narrative around that project, which is rooted in like, why are you doing this? Why do you do what you do? How do you feel about what you do? And translating that into a design, distilling it into a space where you walk in and you feel the leader's sort of sense of direction it's incredibly challenging, but incredibly interesting and rewarding. I'm Seth Hanley. I'm a principal and co-founder of Design Blitz. I'm also the managing director of the Los Angeles office.
And I'm Melissa Hanley. You might have guessed we're partners and partners. Also a co-founder, architect, and I run our San Francisco and Denver studios.
That's awesome. And you guys, are you the sole owners? Or are there any other?
Yeah.
Okay.
The sole partners, the sole deciders, the janitors, the accountants, like all of the things.
All the hats. I love it. And you guys have been doing that for, it's over a decade now, right?
Yeah. We just had 11 years in August.
Nice. Congrats.
So it's, we're sort of having flashbacks for the last 6 months or so, because we started during a recession. Before we started recording, we were talking a little about starting a business during a recession. And I think there was something very formative about that, really starting in 2009 and knowing that the world was going through this dramatic change, and it was the Great Recession, and there was just so much kind of malaise in general. People thought we were nuts, and it was just actually a great time to start a business because there was such positive energy around something good that was happening. And we didn't know anybody in San Francisco. We had just moved there, didn't know a soul, started this practice, and just kind of came out the door swinging and landed Skype's North American headquarters as our first commercial project.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our very, very first project was a slab for a generator, and a contractor we knew threw it to us as a bone, like, you guys are starting out, you need some work. And it was like $1,000 fee. And then they didn't even build it the way we designed it. Like, it was just like a classic first project. And then our second real project was Skype, which was kind of crazy. And it started out, it was like a 6-month, I call it like 6-month dating job interview, where they hired us to do like a little bit of work and a little bit more work. And then finally it was a 90,000 square foot building that we did in our dining room. And so
that became our calling card, and then that really, I think, set the course for our practice. When you start an architecture firm, you're up for anything, and we're still up for anything. But that sort of became the calling card for commercial workplace interiors for us, and then from there we started getting more of that work and really developing our expertise in that area. And so that, I think, that is what we're primarily known for as a firm. Workplace.
And we hadn't done workplace before. We had come from a firm doing schools and hospitals, so that was not in our bailiwick.
I'm assuming when you started about a decade ago, it was just the two of you, right?
Yeah.
And it's that was it was in a pod. And now it's what, roughly 20, 30 people? 18 people. Okay.
Yeah, we're smaller than we were a couple months ago for sure.
It's been a challenge. So some of my clients, kind of off topic, but a lot of folks I helped kind of go out on their own and start from an insurance standpoint, because the economy was good. There was just a lot of work, right? Like if you had a client who was interested in doing more, or maybe a couple connections and things like that, you can kind of get a firm off the ground.
Yeah.
But to your point, starting in a recession is like, it makes you be a little more particular about things, right? Like you really need to have that business plan in place. You really need to understand the financials a little bit. And so I'm seeing that, not a ton of it, but I'm seeing that from some firms right now, which is like, how are we going to make this work next year?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
It's
an interesting point. It has to be a very deliberate act.
Yeah.
Right.
Even if the reason that you find yourself starting a firm is out of your control. I mean, Melissa and I were working at the same architecture firm, and we were let go on the same time, same day, different rooms.
Literally.
And we literally started Blitz the next day.
Wow.
So, with a hell of a tequila hangover.
With a yes.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, right. Yeah, no.
That's a great story. That's a great story.
But in any event, the business plan was obviously one of the first things that we wrote.
Absolutely.
And it's a very interesting exercise because it challenges you to ask the question why, apart from necessity.
Right.
And I think that if times had been really good and there was work flying at us, we might have sort of fallen into it and not really understood, okay, where are we taking this thing? Why are we doing this? And that was, it definitely sharpens you up.
I think it's also one of those skills that they don't teach you in school. And I think it's completely ridiculous that there isn't a business background in design school, because it's so much of what we do. Beyond just the design in our day-to-day practice, we're reviewing budgets, we're reviewing contracts, we're working on pull planning and schedules for clients. And there's so much strategy in the execution of the work that we do. It's not just about design. And that is really missing from the education process, and something that, a lot of folks in our office say, like, if we'd just taken an accounting class, like one would have been fine. Because trying to get your head around a balance sheet, in your 20s, you're like, wait, what? What is this? What, this snapshot in time of this moment? Like, why would you need that? Like, well, it's, that's important. Being able to decipher a P&L, being able to look at these things, it's quite important.
It's such an important point. And I feel like I've kind of hit on this with a number of firm owners like yourselves, which is there's the formal education of design, and that is incredibly important. We would never say anything otherwise, but there's just so much you don't learn, right? Especially being a business owner, and the business of just purely being a business owner, and then the business of design, right? Understanding how to develop business, understanding how to manage people, and it's a lot of on-the-job training is what I'm hearing.
The managing of people is a huge thing. Our business is so collaborative. I mean, it's not just collaborative within the design firm, it's collaborative with our consultants, our clients, our contractors. There's so many players that come to bear on getting a project done. And it's not really something that's encouraged, I think, either in the educational process. It's a lot of solo work. Sometimes there's teamwork, but it's not very well structured. And
I think there's more now, but certainly when we were in school, it was a very solo exercise.
For sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that the ability to manage others and to manage time is really critical. And it isn't really taught, or at least it wasn't really taught.
No.
I think the other thing too is just the ability to kind of check your ego a little bit, like, I think we come out of school being like, I have arrived, I'm ready to tackle the buildings. And it's even 11 years on, and we get some pretty special commissions. It's never about us, it's never about what Seth thinks or Melissa thinks or anybody thinks about this thing. It's a group, it's a team sport.
Definitely a team sport. I mean, we always say to clients, there'll be plenty of us in the project. I'm not worried about us, our signatures being in there, for maybe want of a better description. But what really drives us and what's really interesting, and especially doing the kind of work that we do, which is primarily workplace, is learning about, and I say this as business owners who, as you say, are like learning on the job, learning about other people's businesses. We get incredible insight, and we get to sit across the table from brilliant people who are literally, in some cases, changing the world with the technology that they're developing.
100%.
And I think for us to be able to, get their time, be sat across the table from them and ask them questions that are all leading to developing a narrative, design narrative around their project, which is rooted in, like, why are you doing this? Why do you do what you do? How do you feel about what you do? And translating that into a design, distilling it into a space where you walk in and you feel the leader's sort of sense of direction it's incredibly challenging, but incredibly interesting and rewarding. And I
and
think,
so often we get off topic too, because it's like,
oh yeah,
I'm just really interested in like, what does it mean to go to China and find a designer who can do this thing and manufacture this thing, and like how does that work? How does it get here? How do you distribute it? What is this? I mean, it's just absolutely brilliant.
I was going to say, I think that's where some of the selfishness comes in, because we start, like asking questions that are very interesting to us and also pertinent to the design. Yeah, asking for
I know that feeling very well, very well. But this is another theme that keeps popping up, which is in design, I feel like there's this giant mountain, right? And each year you're in it, you're climbing the mountain ever so slowly, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but it's a lot taller than I think most people can see in the beginning of their career. And that was one of the points that is getting hammered home from folks who have been doing it a lot longer is don't expect too much of yourself in the beginning, right? And understand that this is an endeavor. This is a climb. This is something that you get better at every day. This is not professional sports where you have a short lifespan of your 20s, and then by the time you're 30, you're done, and you need to move on. This is the exact opposite of that, right? Folks who are doing this into their 60s, 70s, 80s, I've even heard 90s, which is amazing.
There's a joke that architects don't retire so much as they die.
They slowly fade away.
Yeah.
Like
right.
At the table and then poop.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and then so the other part of what you just said is the communication factor. And this is something that I'm hearing this younger generation is missing a little bit. And so as I do these, it's really fun for me because I kind of get to report back and say, what if we went in this direction, right? What if we had somebody come in and teach this class? What if we change the curriculum in this way? Because I'm hearing a lot of this firm is amazing, but like I have headphones on now. They come in, these younger folks, they put the headphones on and they sit at their computer and they don't really talk to anybody or not enough, right? They're so well versed in the software and the digital tools, right? They've grown up with the internet and they grew up with CAD and then BIM and all these things. But the hand, actually physically drawing, my aunt actually drew this. She was a designer, and like to be able to sit and sketch, right? That's becoming a little more of a lost art. So it's like, we know these things are cyclical, right? I mean, that's just the way the world works. But I'm always curious to see, like, what, in your opinion, what do you think is kind of a lost art or a skill that you would love to see folks that you're hiring or maybe just anybody at your firm that you would love to have them be able to build?
Yeah, I think the first thing that springs to mind is about interpersonal communication. And there are so many tools available to communicate with people. And I still maintain that one of the best tools is the telephone in whatever form it takes.
Yeah.
Because you can hear, and we were talking about this a little bit ago in remote meetings where you can't get a sense of the feeling of the room necessarily from a video call, if everybody's got the cameras off. And you can hear when you're talking to somebody, I think, how they are perhaps thinking and feeling. There's much more ability to interpret the words that are coming back and forth. And there's almost zero ability to interpret when you're trading emails or you're trading Slack messages or you're trading texts, how somebody feels about what they do. And you can get completely the wrong end of the stick. And I always say, like, one email begets like 5 more emails, but sometimes you can just pick up the phone, get it done, get your answer, and then move on with your life. And there's a great convenience to being able to just type something out and send it off, right? And then you've done your job, right? I asked the question. And that sometimes can just make a lot more work, or worse, lead to misunderstandings that make even more work than that. So I would love to see, more jumping on the telephone and getting things resolved.
There you go. I like it. Melissa, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think an appreciation for the 10,000 hours. I think the longevity of the career is it's a critical concept. So like when we're looking at resumes, if I see somebody's left their job like every 18 months, every 2 years, I'm like, no.
Right.
I'm looking for somebody who understands that it's going to take 6 months before you're even valuable to the company, that you really have to like learn how to integrate your skill set with the company, and then really dive into the depths of what a project means or what it means to do that work, and taking the mentorship opportunities and taking those moments to really hone your own skills and research and all of those wonderful tools that we sort of develop over our careers. And that 10,000 hours until you're, really competent, let alone proficient, is true. And you're not going to get that if you bounce around. And I hear so many times like, I wanted to get this type of experience and that type of experience. But what you got was a lot of new experience, not a lot of deep experience. And I also think that it's a big disservice to your connection with mentors, because to develop that level of trust and sort of faith in your mentor, you need time. And, you're not going to develop that lifelong mentor if you're, gone in 18 months. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, I think about really one of our key mentors who we finally were able to afford to hire from our last firm. We've known him for 15 years at this point. And that takes time to get to that level of candor and trust. And
and it's interesting because I think at the sort of height of hiring that was going on in San Francisco, we were reading articles where the advice being given was don't stay in a job more than like 18 months.
Which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And people coming out of school asking for $90,000. I was like, if you can get it, go get it. Like, I mean, you're living in. Let me just excuse myself really quick.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah. You're just going to have something in the background.
Don't worry about it at all. That's, so that's such an interesting, because I've heard that advice, not just in design, but in other firms too, which is in the fear of being in kind of what I would think of like my grandparents' generation, where you had just one job your entire career, right? This is what you did. And, maybe they took okay care of you, but in an effort to make sure that you're getting somebody taking care of you the best possible way. Right. I feel like people start looking for that. And the moment things look a little like, oh, I don't know if this is what I wanted to do. I had a bad day. It's like, all right, well, I need to start looking for something else now. It's like, man. Yeah. Okay. That's a big Simon Sinek. Do you know Start With Why by Simon Sinek? Great book. Love that book. That's he's huge on that. And that is something, I don't think that's by any means strictly a design problem, right? That's an across the board problem, but
no, I mean, there's a certain amount of FOMO associated with it, frankly. And yes, to your point, there will be lots of bad days at the office, and it's part of working life. And one bad day shouldn't trigger a desire to. I mean, it depends on. I would advocate for people staying in positions where they can get their feet under them, get that depth of knowledge. I certainly don't advocate for people staying in positions where it's a horrible experience.
Right.
Don't keep doing that.
Yeah.
But, that's actually something I think, we talk a lot about, that there's this idea that architecture needs to be a monastic pursuit, that it's like in it for the pain and suffering, and you never get paid, and it's long hours, and it's all this stuff.
And when we get together, all we do is complain about it, and then we go back to it again like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't agree with that either. So.
No. I mean, not that we don't do that, but occasionally. But it's like that is such a horrible narrative to assign to this profession, especially when we're trying to like engender a creative output. And that is a device of our own making.
Yeah.
I mean, we really believe that you can run a successful business, a profitable business that doesn't take it out of people's hides. I mean, basically what you're doing, if you're working 70 hours a week, you're giving away 30 hours for free to your employer. And that means that a project isn't being run efficiently, or that a fee structure was too low, or something is not working there.
It can also mean that you're extremely ambitious and that you're attempting to flatten your own learning curve faster.
Totally true. But that's not the professional, that's not the narrative of the profession, though. It's not that people are just, love of the game.
Yeah.
They're saying that it's, that it's a crappy profession that takes it out of people. And that if that's happening, it's because something's wrong. And that it shouldn't be happening. It's poor planning, it's poor staffing, it's wrong people, wrong skill, poor training. There's something wrong there.
Right.
So that's again something that isn't really taught very well. It's like, how do you plan a project? How do you execute a project?
Right.
How do you manage a project? Like, how do you staff it? How do you break these things down? And you know,
it's a post-rationalization of the sort of management failure.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We make up for the issues by throwing more hours at it.
Which is crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
And also when it's done, you know, when we could design until infinity, but that's not, you know, there is a business of design.
Yeah, we're very strong believers that it is a for-profit exercise, and designers, they bring great change through the work that they do, and that change has an incredible value. And then it's often overlooked or treated almost as maybe disposable, and it shouldn't be at all. It's actually quite the opposite.
I mean, you think about the players involved in a transaction that we typically work with, like commercial interiors. We are most often the least paid people on the project. And I would say that, you know, pat on the back, we offer the greatest value, or at least the most long-lasting
We think we're the most
value.
valuable people on the project.
I mean, obviously, you know, and we're darn nice people too. You know, we have to do a better job of educating folks. I hate this phrase, by the way, like educating the public on our value to what we do, but we do.
Yeah, but that's on us.
Yeah.
Right, that's on the individual designers to do that.
100%.
Yeah. There's an interesting conversation to have, and I'd love to talk with you about it sometime in terms of designers kind of one-upping each other and cutting into the margins, being willing to taking on certain work and things like that, right? And there's a whole just kind of like, it's this self-perpetuating thing, and it becomes, and it sounds like you guys are doing a great job. If you're like, look, that's not what I want. That's not, first of all, it's not the quality of life that I want.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's not fun to think about, you know, this beautiful thing that you spend all these hours on as something, well, somebody's just going to come in and value engineer it out or whatever, you know, just eat away at that. And you're all of a sudden you're like, man, that wasn't how I saw that going.
Right.
Well, it's a race to the bottom too.
Yeah,
it is. Right.
We're lucky that we have really good relationships with other principals in our field, certainly in the Bay Area and beyond. And, you know, there are candid conversations saying like, no, we're not going to do this fee cutting business. Like, this is not what we're doing.
Or work for free.
Yeah.
Work for free, right?
I mean, some of the cheeky RFPs that you see come across are like, please give us a free design as part of your response. It's like, no, thank you. I mean, do it. And anyway, so there are conversations that happen. It's like we all could go down to $2 a foot if we wanted to never eat again, but let's not do that.
Right.
Let's not do that.
But I think that, you know, the general sense is just about appreciating the value of design and what we do, and making sure that we maintain our integrity as a firm when we're dealing with clients who are perhaps you know, asking for a little more than they should. But then again, it's incumbent upon us to set out why it is that we offer a value that is commensurate with the fees that we're seeking. And,
right.
And also, if we gave it away for free, what does that say to the people who are paying for it?
Yeah, that is true. You devalue it. Yeah. No, 100%. It's an interesting problem, and you guys have a really good outlook on it, and so that's something that I hope that we can pass along.
Thank you.
One of the things I hear a lot is there was a particular moment in my childhood when I maybe not knew, but at least gave very serious thought to becoming an architect. Right? It was just like this thing that I can draw back on this moment, this day. Do either or both of you have a kind of a moment or a memory of something like that?
First, I'm going to ask you, how many of the stories that you hear involve Lego?
But, you know, probably like one or two, but not as many as you'd think.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm shocked by that. Oh, well, I mean, yours are all about Lego.
I blame Lego. It was the gateway, I guess, for me profession. But what's interesting is it's not like I ever had an aha moment as a kid, like, oh, I'm going to be an architect. I realized later on in life that lots of things that probably happened in my childhood were funneling me towards an architectural education, but I didn't realize until afterwards that had been happening. I was a little bit clueless, I think, as a young person anyway, but I had a great commitment to making things and love playing with Lego. And then when I started high school, we still had design, technology, and drafting classes, and I just ate those up. And I think I had my first drawing board when I was like 12 at home. And along with that came Ching's Form, Space, and Order. And so I was already reading about architecture and reading about designing and drafting. And
at 12, you were reading Ching.
Well, I mean, just in terms of how it related to drafting, we had these great classes in high school where a teacher would come and just like put a car part on the table and walk out, so like draw this in 3D. And back then you had a whole sort of plethora of tools, including like French curves and S curves and all kinds of things, and you would actually have to plot it in three different dimensions, which is not particularly interesting to a lot of people, but I love that stuff. And by the time I got to college, after the light bulb went off, that actually I'd been sort of moving towards choosing architecture as a career, I realized how well equipped I was, also because of being able to think spatially.
Yeah.
Through just playing with building blocks, plus that design education that I got, I was very well prepared by the time I got there.
I mean, that plasticity is something you have to build. That's not something you're just born. The ability to kind of think around something dimensionally and spatially. And if you just live in the digital sphere, you're never going to get there. Like you have to do physical things, drawing it, understanding it, thinking about it, measuring it, and that is huge.
Yeah, I was recently putting together an architectural Lego set that somebody got me. They did do those sets where it's like Big Ben and the Eiffel Tower.
Yep. I'm gonna get the Golden Gate Bridge. Actually, that's on my list.
It was interesting.
We should say it was the Death Star.
Flicking through the instruction book and actually realizing, because I obviously hadn't looked at one of these for 25, 30 years. That's how I think. That's how I think about how things go together. Even now, even though the drawings that I make are different, the logic was, the imprint for the logic was from that play, and that's so incredibly important.
Got it. That's cool. That's cool. Melissa, how about you? Any particular moment, Lego moments also, or?
I had Duplos like back in as a kid.
Oh, I do. I remember Duplos.
So my mom was a paralegal, my dad's a contractor, and I like to say that I've disappointed them both equally, because I thought I was going to be an attorney for the longest time, which horrified my father. And in college, I was pre-law and working for a lawyer as a paralegal, like putting myself through school. And I went to the SF MoMA and on my birthday, which I like to do almost every year, and just sat in front of a Rothko and just had this kind of like meltdown. Like at 20 years old, I'm having this like midlife crisis at 20. I don't know. It was like a quarter life crisis. I'm miserable. I don't like what I'm doing. There's nothing creative. So I said no to Cornell, and I said no to law, and I said no to everything, quit, and went into art. And from there, I realized that it was a lot of pot smoking hippies. So instead, I needed something more rigorous, and I got into architecture. I actually didn't really understand what an architect was, because the only references I had were like the dad on Brady Bunch. Like it just wasn't something that we knew, or at least where I was growing up, that wasn't really a profession that I knew about. And once I got into it at Cal, went to Berkeley, it was like, oh my God, these are my people. This is my thing. This is like the mashup of technical and creative. I love all of it. So it was just meant to be. Just took a while to get there.
That's funny that you say that. So it makes me think of Mark Cavaniero of Cavaniero. I'm sure you probably know him or have heard of him. He also, I think he was on track to go to law school. He finished up undergrad at Harvard and studied like liberal arts or something not design related, and kind of got it in his head he was going to fly out to Berkeley. He got accepted in architecture school. He wasn't quite sure about it, but if it didn't work out, he's like, I'm going to be an attorney, right? And it's just like it's such a decision tree to go off in this direction versus that direction, right? But it's fascinating. And Cecilia Casada of Casada Architecture, her mom was an architect, right? So a very early, it was an interesting conversation to hear the perspective of, having a mother who was one of not that many women in architecture at the time. And I think her mom actually told her, don't do it, right? Don't be an architect. Go find something different. Yeah. So in that respect, I think she did, to a degree, disappoint her mom, but she has a great career and she absolutely loves what she does. So, but it's just funny how that works out. I talked to another gentleman who I think he studied engineering before. He was like electrical engineering, and he was drafted, I think, into Vietnam, went to the Navy in Vietnam, came back and decided, this engineering thing's not for me, and became an architect. So there's just all these kind of cool stories of the way it all comes about. It's just, and that's one of the things I hope to get across to our audience is it doesn't need to be this like, I'm the kid with the pencil and I sketch, therefore I will be this, right?
Right.
I mean, architecture is one of these amazing professions, as I've discovered over the last 15 years, that you can do so many different things with it. I mean, you can do strategy, you can do design, you can be the guru, the savant, is what our
Right.
calls himself. Like, he writes specifications. He doesn't do any drawing whatsoever. He writes specifications, and they are epic. Like, and he's that guy. You know, we know like the woman at BCJ, who's the door hardware person. It's like, you want her doing your door hardware,
right?
Because like it's going to be perfect. And
right.
But these are all architects, and so you can do all of these different things with this wonderful profession, and really find your niche and find the thing that you love doing. It's not a one size fits all, and it's not a one type of career, which is
right.
the thing that keeps us interesting. I mean, the idea of knowing exactly what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, and like just knowing that you just have to go out and do it. Like, that's terrifying to me. Like, oh my God, like why even show up, you know?
Right.
But here, I mean, this year, we're calling 2020 the year of like, why not, you know?
Yeah.
So we're mostly known as commercial workplace. Like, that's what our bread and butter has been for a long time. And this year we're designing the inside of a bus. We're doing retail for luxury cars. We're doing whole building work. I mean, like, there's just all this random stuff that's coming to us. Multifamily housing. It's like, sure, why not? Like, we don't know how to do these things, never designed anything that's going to move. Like, sure, let's figure it out.
Yeah,
it's been an interesting and challenging year on multiple levels.
Oh, yeah.
But I can only imagine. It's my, I will echo that statement. So
yeah, but I think that's part of the challenge, actually, because we definitely have found a groove. It's to continue to challenge yourself, to continue to seek out the challenges so that you keep learning, so that it stays interesting. And then you learn new things that you can take to the other things that you're already doing that are.
It all knits together.
Yeah, already.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Right. I love it's just problem solving, right? It's one of its most basic forms. It's just problem solving. And that idea that you talked about, if I was working on a conveyor belt line or like putting together automobiles, you know, I think of that. It's just like, you're the person that puts the left door on. You're just like, oh my God, like that sounds miserable to me. But
yeah. But just imagine the day you get to put the right door on.
I know.
There could be I'm sure there is an artistry to that, and you know, you're glad that the right person is putting the left door in your car, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's all about just finding where you sit comfortably in your career and what's interesting to you, and you know,
and not feeling like you have to be all things. I think this is probably the biggest problem for sole practitioners. And what is it? I think 3 out of 5 businesses are sole practitioners in architecture.
I want to say like 50%.
I've heard as high as 4 out of 5.
Whoa.
Maybe I think that stat is like something like 80% of architects will at one point in their career be a sole proprietor, like go out on their own and then either decide it's not for them, or maybe at the end of their career, you know, do like the last whatever number of years that way. But it's remarkably high, which is, you know, it really is.
And Seth and I work really well together because we're incredibly different, and the way that we approach projects, the way we think about projects, the things that interest us are very different. And we try to surround ourselves with people that are we call them like weird and wonderful. So like everyone at Blitz is just kind of weird and wonderful, a couple clicks off normal, and that's what we look for. Like, we want people that are just going to bring their own bizarreness to the table so that they are thinking differently. Because if it is just like a carbon copy, then somebody's redundant. Nobody, you know, that person doesn't need to be there. But I think it's so hard for folks that are sole practitioners that don't have that voice to say, like, get out of the rabbit hole, like, don't, you know, stop yourself, that's not crazy, or that's amazing, push that thing further, or, you know, have you heard about this product that does this thing? Like, just the community and and frankly also just sort of the support. I mean, starting a business, I was 26 when we started the company, so I knew nothing, like absolutely jack about all of this.
I was 34. I didn't know much more.
The beautiful thing about starting when you're 26 is that you have the hubris. So you assume that you can figure it out. And also you have that like wonderful energy, like that bouncy energy. So you mentioned earlier about professional athletes and like, you know, they've got a time limit. I will say the energy required to get a firm off the ground, starting earlier is not a bad thing, because the idea of doing it now, like,
I'm glad we did it earlier rather than
we didn't
later.
know any better, and we had all that great energy.
Yeah. But I think that, to your point, having somebody to balance you out is incredibly important. It's different for us, obviously, because we're partners and partners. And so, you know, we're 100% invested, and in many ways that actually makes it easier because we don't have to schedule a meeting to get something figured out.
Yeah.
You know, we figure stuff out over breakfast, and, you know, that makes things go a lot faster.
Which does drive our senior team nuts.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we forget to bring them along, and we'll be like, well, yeah, I mean, the thing that we talked about, it's like right, you weren't, you know, at dinner. So yeah.
But balancing out each other's strengths and weaknesses is incredibly important as you build a firm. As you build a firm, I think that's obviously also incredibly important to find people that balance you out. And we have a really great team. I'd say that one of the biggest challenges developing as an architect is finding out what your strengths are, and also accepting what your strengths aren't.
Yeah.
And that you need help with those, and those are the people you go find.
Right.
Because you're not going to be all things to all people.
Yeah.
And like impossible. Accepting that, especially with the ego that we have as architects, because we assume like we are the architects, must be good at everything. Let's do everything. It's like, no, like I can't do QuickBooks. Neither can you. Like we might as well just like hire a bookkeeper.
Right.
Don't like kill yourself over QuickBooks. You know, specs are not my thing. Great, we've hired a spec writer. Like, awesome. You just know that you don't need to be. I feel like I'm having a Mike Pence moment here, like with this fly.
So,
you don't need to be all things to all people. That's okay. Like that's okay. And in fact, recognizing that sooner rather than later is really smart and will free you up to do so many other things that you are wonderful at.
That's so awesome. So the two of you obviously complement each other really well. And then it sounds like you subbed out some of the like kind of typical things as a business owner. What was the step-by-step to get to 18 people? So is that next person, is that just another designer? Is it a drafter? Is that admin? Or is that admin? Okay, so admin.
All the things you do in your daily life that take you away from doing the thing that makes you money. Like answering the phone.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Makes you money as a small business, like stupid things like taking the mail to the mailbox. Right. I mean, it's just like, it's all those perfunctory things that just distract you from the zone of keeping your business going. Get an admin first.
Right.
Inexpensive hire. It will change your life. Find a good one. We had a couple randos, and then we had some very good ones. And now like the folks on our operations team are mind-blowingly good. And actually I was joking this afternoon, I had a staffing meeting with our senior team, and I was like, just so you all know, like, you all are leaving before Cassie leaves, because like, just FYI.
Yeah, not that that's happening, but
of course not. But, I
mean, the importance placed on time. I think it took us a little bit of time to figure out that actually time is our most scarce resource.
It really is.
And maximizing the amount of time, quality time that you have to do the thing that you're really good at that makes you the most money, to say it's a lesson that you learn the hard way, and then once you've learned it, you never go back.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Great stuff. All right. I want to make sure we come in under our time limit here. So we've got about 10 minutes left. So I was going to ask two more questions, kind of related to each other. So the first one, when you guys are hiring, if you're going to hire someone either for an internship or someone who's coming out of school with plans to get licensed and hopefully be a contributing team member for a long time, is there anything specific that you look for? You mentioned kind of some things that with the timing on the resume and things like that. Are there anything else that you think you'd love to just like get this out there? You're like, gosh, if these folks would just know something like this, right? It would be really helpful.
I look for the thinking. I want to see like crazy thoughts in a portfolio from school. Like, don't play it safe for your projects in school. That is the time to take the wild ideas. And I mean, the first serious designer that we hired, his thesis project from his master's program was an office in space. And we're like, cool, let's like talk about that. And he just, he went down this rabbit hole about working in zero gravity and what could it mean and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it just demonstrates a level of thought and creative thinking and exploration and curiosity that is awesome. Like, that's awesome. What I don't want to see is the same Rhino button getting pushed and the same algorithm coming out, because we see so many of those, and you can almost tell by the school, like each year, like who developed what, because like all the projects look the same. And it's the same like curvilinear thing with perforations and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, fine, you can use a program, but can you think? I want to see what you think. And actually, my first boss in architecture, I shouldn't have only boss in architecture, just as it turns out, is a Cal alum and hired me because I went to Cal. And he said, are you a Cal alum?
My dad is. I'm a huge Cal football fan. I did not go to Cal, but
okay, we'll get to that property. And so, the two big schools in California are UC Berkeley and SLO. San Luis. And he said, we hire people from both because down at San Luis, you learn how to do. Like, they come out of school with all the technical skills. And being a complete snob that he is, he said, but if you go to Cal, you learn how to think. And so, you may not be able to push the buttons day one, but you'll know how to think 15 years into your career. Mm-hmm. And so I use that whenever I need to feel morally superior.
I love that. I've heard that described as, I want to not just see the finished product, but I want to see all the crumpled up pieces of paper that in the wastebasket, because I want to understand how you got there, right? And it sounds like that's what you're saying, which is, that's a skill set that's extremely important, right?
Yeah. Well, there's something to uncover, because if I see all the finished, polished stuff in your portfolio, then like I can't make the leap to what I can uncover from you in the future. Right. There's more to get.
Right. I love it. Seth, anything to add to that?
No, I think Melissa summed it up perfectly. Thinking is critically important, obviously, and the why. The why behind the what, I think, is a big motivator for me. And it can be disappointing sometimes to respond to a very well put together resume and a very well put together portfolio with an interview, and then in the interview discover that the why behind the what maybe is a little bit
there's no there. Yeah. Because it looks good.
Right.
I mean,
okay. Right. It's hard to quantify. It's just like this magic, this sort of like it factor, right? Just something there that's strong. So okay. Kind of along the same lines, but maybe not so much hiring related. What is the best piece of advice that you could give to an up and coming design professional? Either something that you want somebody to know, or just something you wish somebody had told you along the way.
Well, aside from taking that accounting class,
good one.
This is maybe less specific to a design professional, but I would probably just give it in general. One of our clients who was kind of a serial entrepreneur very early on said, take more pictures. And this was probably 2010. So the iPhone had only been around for 2 years, right? But now people are taking pictures too much, less of your lunch. But he said it as a way to document your experience and your journey, because so many of us don't write in journals or diaries or whatever, but that this is such an incredible thing that we're all doing, and such a wonderful experience, especially if you start a business and it's hard and it's interesting and you've never done it before, and this career just can take you in so many different ways. So he said, take more pictures so that you can remember all the things that happened. And we really love that advice.
Yeah,
that's solid.
I think for me it would be a sponge. Just in the early years, absorb as much information as you possibly can. Just gobble it all up. And the reason I say that is that I think one of the greatest tools in your toolbox as you get further along in your career, whatever the career is experience. Because you can have a tool, but knowing whether it's the right tool to use in a particular situation can be very difficult, and also often only comes after you've tried it, realize it's not the right one in that situation. So there are a lot of people around us that have already made all of these mistakes.
Right.
And they can save you making that mistake if you keep your ears open and you communicate with them. And
price is a little humility.
Yeah, that's the price of entry, a little humility.
Right.
You can learn a tremendous amount faster if you keep your ears open and keep that information coming in.
I love that. I was just finished a series on Netflix, The Queen's Gambit. Did you watch that by chance?
Yeah.
Did you watch it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So my dad was a chess nerd. He kind of made me a chess nerd. And I was in New York last year, actually. He took me to see Searching for Bobby Fischer in 1993 in the theater.
Wow.
I was in Washington Square Park, and I got to play chess with the guys that, they charge like $10. And my girlfriend and I, my fiance, had just started dating, and I was like, I need to go play chess. And she's like, you're really weird. But I was watching the series over the weekend, and the idea that a grandmaster of chess studies positions, they study games that weren't theirs, they study positions on the off chance that they might have to use those years from now, right? So that they've seen it at least once and then have the ability to kind of pivot from there. That's a fascinating concept to me. And I think kind of that can be applied to design, right? It's like, you want to go out there and gather all of this information, because 20 years from now, 30 years from now, that might be really valuable to you, right? And you just don't even know it yet. So awesome.
The things that come back from, architectural history in college, or, that design article that I read, 4 weeks ago or something, like being able to talk about precedent and understanding technology of design it'll just take you so far. It'll just
right. Right. That's really what I'm gathering from all of these is we want to kind of pivot the program to be more practical. Let the bachelor's degree and the master's degree do what they're designed to do, and they're amazing. We're not going to be able to replace that by any means, but there is just a level. There's some stuff here that we can start from a younger age and at least get the ball rolling, and that might help. I mean, it's going to take years, but that might help kind of open that up a little bit. So
I think it's so brilliant. I'm so glad that somebody is taking this on, and it's just incredibly valuable that the next generation come in with better skills than what we had. Love
it. No, you're right. You guys, thank you so much for taking the time. Genuine, this was a lot of fun. You guys had great answers and great energy.